As the soft glow of chandeliers bathed the elegant wedding venue in golden light, I stood on the cusp of what I believed would be the happiest day of my life. My name is Michael, a 34-year-old Chicago architect with a thriving career, a cozy brownstone, and a woman I thought was my forever, Sarah. The rehearsal dinner was perfect, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and promises of a future together. But as the night wound down, my world unraveled. A single text message, glowing ominously on my phone, exposed a betrayal so raw it felt like a punch to the soul. The woman I loved, the one I was set to marry in mere hours, had crossed a line with someone I trusted most. The dream of our wedding day crumbled into a nightmare. This isn't just a story, it's my story, one of heartbreak, shattered trust, and the strength to face what comes next. Inspired by real events, this journey dives into the pain of betrayal and the courage to rebuild. Welcome to the wedding that never happened. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you like this video. You can help me continue to spread the meaningful lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment 1. If you don't like it, please comment 0 to let me know so I can make a better video for you. Now let's get started. The autumn sun dipped low over Chicago, casting a warm, golden hue across the city's skyline, and I, Michael, felt like I was living in a dream. At 34, I had carved out a life that seemed to check every box. Watching my ideas take shape in glass and steel, and coming home to a cozy brownstone in Lincoln Park felt like a reward for every late night at the office. The house. She was a high school art teacher with a warmth that drew people in and a creativity that made every moment with her feel alive. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight just right. Every moment felt like a scene from a movie, and I was convinced she was my leading lady. My family adored her too. My father, James, a retired firefighter with a booming laugh and a heart as big as Lake Michigan, took to Sarah immediately. He'd tease her about her fancy taste in wine, but he'd always pour her an extra glass at Sunday dinners. Those dinners were sacred in our family, a tradition at my parents' sprawling suburban home in Oak Park. The table groaned under plates of my mother's pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole, while stories and laughter filled the air. My mother, Ellen, was the glue that held us together. Her quiet strength and endless patience had weathered decades of raising me and my 2 brothers, and she welcomed Sarah like a daughter. I'd watch Sarah help Mom in the kitchen, chopping vegetables or sneaking a taste of dessert, and my heart would swell. She fit. She belonged. Our life together wasn't just about the big moments. It was the small ones, too. The lazy Saturday mornings when we'd linger in bed, her head on my chest, as we planned our next adventure. We traveled when we could, chasing sunsets in places like Napa Valley, where we wandered through vineyards, or the Smoky Mountains, where we hiked trails and laughed until our sides ached. One summer, we rented a cabin on Lake Geneva, spending days kayaking and nights wrapped in blankets by a fire pit, roasting marshmallows, and talking about the future. We dreamed of kids, a dog, maybe a second home somewhere warm. 2 kids, a golden retriever, and a beach house in Florida, Sarah would say, her voice light but certain. I believed every word. The wedding planning brought us even closer. We chose an October date, picturing a crisp fall day with leaves and shades of crimson and gold. The venue was a historic estate just outside the city, with sprawling gardens and a grand ballroom that felt like it belonged in a fairy tale. Sarah threw herself into the details, picking out centerpieces, debating between blush and ivory linens, and insisting on a live band because DJ weddings are tacky. I loved her passion, even when it meant late-night arguments over guest lists or cake flavors. We'd laugh it off, pour a glass of wine. Dad offered to cover the bar tab, joking that he'd need to remortgage the house to keep up with Sarah's taste for craft cocktails. Mom spent hours helping us with seating charts, her meticulous nature ensuring no family drama would erupt over who sat where. My brothers, Tom and Chris, planned an epic bachelor party, promising no strippers, just good whiskey and bad decisions. Lost in the rhythm of my pencil against paper, while Sarah graded papers beside me, her feet tucked under her on the couch. We were a team, balancing ambition with comfort, dreams with reality. I could already hear the band playing our song, see Sarah smile as we danced our first dance. It was all so clear, so certain. Until that one night, when a single message shattered the perfect picture I'd built in my mind, exposing a truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family. The night before my wedding was supposed to be a quiet one, a moment to soak in the anticipation of the life Sarah and I were about to start. The rehearsal dinner had wrapped up earlier that evening, their voices mingling with the soft strum of a guitarist playing in the corner. Sarah had been radiant, her auburn hair swept into a loose bun, her smile lighting up the room as she leaned into me, parting ways to follow the old tradition of not seeing each other until she walked down the aisle. My heart was full, my mind buzzing with the promise of forever. I checked into the hotel where the wedding would take place, a grand, historic estate with ivy-draped walls and chandeliers that cast a soft glow over the lobby. My father, James, suggested we grab a drink at the hotel bar, just the two of us. One last night as a bachelor, son, he said with a grin, his voice carrying the familiar weight of his firefighter days. Steady and reassuring. We settled into a cozy corner booth, the kind with worn leather seats that creaked under our weight. The bar was quiet, save for the low hum of conversation and the clink of ice in glasses. Dad ordered his usual bourbon, neat, and I stuck with a craft beer, the kind Sarah always teased me for overanalyzing. We talked about everything and nothing, his old stories from the firehouse, my nerves about the wedding, and the life I was about to build with Sarah. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, his calloused fingers strong but gentle. "You've got a good one, Michael," he said, his eyes crinkling with pride. "Sarah's special. Hold on to her." I nodded, my chest tight with gratitude. My father had always been my rock, the man I looked up to more than anyone. Growing up, I'd idolized him, his bravery, his quiet strength, the way he could command a room with a single look. He'd been the one to teach me how to throw a baseball, how to change a tire, how to stand up for what mattered. Sitting there, sharing a drink the night before my wedding, I felt like I was carrying a piece of him into this new chapter of my life. The moment felt sacred, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. As the bartender called last orders, Dad headed to his room, promising to be up early to help with any last-minute setup. I stayed behind, savoring the quiet. My phone sat on the table, its screen dark, a silent companion to my thoughts. I wasn't expecting any messages. Sarah and I had agreed to keep things traditional, no contact until the ceremony. But then it buzzed. A single vibration that cut through the stillness like a crack in glass. I glanced at the screen, assuming it was a friend with a late-night congratulations, or maybe my brother Tom. My finger hesitated over the download button, a strange dread pooling in my stomach. Something told me not to open it, to put the phone down, to go to bed and wake up to my perfect wedding day. What I saw froze my blood. The photo was blurry, taken in low light, but the figures were unmistakable. Sarah, her hair unmistakable even in the dim glow, was pressed close to someone else. A deafening rhythm that drowned out the world around me. The bar, the hotel, the wedding plans, all of it faded into a haze. I stared at the screen, willing it to change, to be a mistake. A cruel prank. But the truth stared back, cold and unyielding. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every interaction. Had there been signs? Sarah's late nights, grading papers at the school. My father's extra visits to our house to help with wedding plans. I thought of the way they'd laugh together at family dinners, the way Sarah would hug him a little longer than seemed necessary. I'd chalked it up to her fitting into the family, to her being the daughter-in-law they'd always wanted. Now, those memories twisted into something sinister, each one a knife in my gut. Alone in the booth, the bourbon's amber glow mocking me from my father's empty glass. The life I'd built, the perfect picture of Sarah, my family, our future, was crumbling, and I couldn't look away. I was staring at a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined, a wound inflicted by the two people I trusted most. The world felt unsteady, like the ground had shifted beneath me, and all I could hear was the thud of my heartbeat, loud and relentless, as the reality of what I'd seen sank in. What came next, I didn't know, but in that moment, nothing would ever be the same. My first instinct was to scream, to call them both and demand answers, to tear apart the perfect picture we'd painted for our wedding day. But as the initial shock gave way to a cold, sharp clarity, something deliberate, I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. I was going to turn it into a plan. I started with the evidence, my hands still trembling. I took a screenshot of the text message and the photo, ensuring every detail was preserved. The timestamp, the blurry but unmistakable figures, the anonymous sender's number, it all needed to be documented. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen harsh against the bar's soft ambience, and uploaded the files to a secure cloud drive. I wasn't taking chances. If this was going to come out, it would be on my terms. My fingers moved with a strange calm, each click a step toward reclaiming power over the chaos threatening to swallow me. I backed up the files twice, once to Google Drive and once to a private Dropbox account, ensuring no glitch or accident could erase the truth. The idea came to me in a flash, as if my pain had sparked a twisted kind of creativity. The wedding was tomorrow, with 200 guests set to fill the grand ballroom of the estate. Sarah and my father thought they'd gotten away with their secret, but I'd make sure everyone knew. Not through a dramatic confrontation or a tearful speech. That wasn't me. I wanted something calculated, something that would hit them where it hurt, in front of everyone they cared about. I opened a web browser and purchased a domain name, something simple and innocuous, michaelandysarah2025.com. It sounded like a wedding website, the kind couples use for RSVPs and photo galleries. But this one would serve a different purpose. I used a basic website builder, my architecture training kicking in as I designed a clean, minimalist page. The truth about Sarah and James. I kept it vague but damning, letting the image speak for itself. I didn't need to spell it out. The implication was enough. With the website live, I turned to the next step, ensuring every guest saw it. I couldn't exactly stand at the altar and project the photo on a screen. That felt too crude, too fleeting. I wanted something tangible, something they'd hold in their hands. I remembered the extra cardstock we'd ordered for the wedding programs, stacked neatly in my hotel room. An idea took shape. I'd create a new invitation, one that would replace the programs we'd painstakingly designed. I drove to a 24-hour print shop in downtown Chicago, the city's neon lights blurring past as my mind raced. The shop was a small, fluorescent-lit space that smelled of ink and coffee, manned by a tired but kind clerk who didn't ask questions. I designed a simple card on their computer, using a template that mimicked our original invitations, elegant font, soft ivory background, but with a twist. At the center was a QR code linking directly to the website. Below it, in delicate script, I wrote, "A special message for our guests." The clerk raised an eyebrow but printed 200 copies without comment. The hum of the machine filling the silence as I watched the cards stack up. Back at the hotel, I set up a makeshift assembly line on the desk in my room. The cardstock was thick. The QR code centered perfectly and slipped into a small envelope with a wax seal, a touch of irony, mimicking the elegance of our original wedding aesthetic. I worked through the night, the repetitive task grounding me, each slice of the cutter a release of the anger and hurt building inside. By dawn, I had 200 envelopes, each containing a quiet bombshell. I stacked them in a box, ready to be placed at every seat in the ballroom before the ceremony began. I imagined the scene, guests arriving in their suits and dresses, chatting about the weather or the open bar, picking up what they thought was a program, only to scan the QR code and see the truth. Sarah, in her white dress, oblivious, was walking down the aisle. My father, standing proudly, was unaware that his secret was about to be exposed to everyone we knew. The plan wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about accountability, about ensuring they couldn't hide behind smiles and lies. I didn't want to scream or fight. I wanted them to face the weight of their actions in a room full of the people they'd deceived. As I sealed the final envelope, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the anonymous number. "You okay?" I didn't respond. I didn't know who they were. A friend, a coworker, someone who'd stumbled on the truth, but their role was done. The rest was up to me. I leaned back in the chair, the room quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. The wedding was hours away, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting, but it had purpose now. I wasn't the man who'd sat in that bar, shattered by a single photo. I was someone with a plan, someone who'd taken betrayal and turned it into something deliberate, something undeniable. The guests would arrive, the music would play, and the truth would unfold, one QR code at a time. Tomorrow wasn't going to be the wedding I dreamed of, it was going to be something else entirely. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and golden, the kind of October day in Chicago that made you believe in new beginnings. The historic estate we'd chosen for the ceremony glowed under the autumn sun, its ivy-covered walls and manicured gardens a perfect backdrop for what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Inside, the grand ballroom was a vision of elegance. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, tables were draped in ivory linens, and centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus perfumed the air. Guests began to arrive, their voices a warm hum as they mingled in their Sunday best, men in tailored suits, women in flowing dresses, all buzzing with the anticipation of a celebration. I stood at the edge of the room, my tuxedo crisp, my heart pounding not with the expected nerves of a groom, but with the weight of what I was about to unleash. The box of envelopes, each containing a QR code linking to the truth about Sarah and my father, sat discreetly with the venue staff, ready to be placed at every seat. I'd barely slept, but the exhaustion was masked by a strange, electric calm. The night before, I'd transformed my pain into a plan, and now it was time to see it through. I moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting hugs, and smiling through the pleasantries. "You must be so excited, Michael," my cousin Lisa said, her eyes bright with genuine warmth. I nodded, the lie tasting bitter but necessary. My parents were there, too, mingling with guests. My mother, Ellen, looked radiant in a navy dress, her smile unwavering as she greeted old friends. My father, James, stood tall in his suit, his firefighter's confidence on full display as he clapped backs and told stories. I avoided his gaze, afraid my eyes would betray the storm inside me. Sarah was upstairs, in the bridal suite, preparing to walk down the aisle. I hadn't seen her since the rehearsal dinner, and I didn't want to. Not yet. The ceremony was set to begin at noon, and as the clock ticked closer, the guests took their seats in the ballroom, which had been transformed into a chapel-like space with rows of chairs facing an arch draped in white chiffon and greenery. The string quartet began to play, their soft notes floating through the room, a haunting contrast to the turmoil in my chest. I took my place at the altar, my best man, Nate, by my side. He nudged me, whispering, "Ready to lock this down, man?" I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. The venue staff, following my instructions, had placed an envelope on every chair, each one sealed with a wax stamp, looking like an elegant addition to the wedding programs. No one suspected a thing, not yet. The music shifted, signaling the bridal party's entrance. Sarah's bridesmaids glided down the aisle, their blush-colored dresses catching the light. Then came Sarah. The room seemed to hold its breath as she appeared, a vision in white lace, her auburn hair cascading in soft waves beneath a delicate veil. Her smile was radiant, her hazel eyes sparkling with what I once would have called love. She moved with grace, her bouquet of lilies trembling slightly in her hands, and the guests turned to watch, their faces alight with admiration. For a moment, I was caught in the memory of why I'd fallen for her, the way she could command a room, the way her laugh made everything brighter. But then I remembered the photo, the text, the betrayal, and my resolve hardened. She reached the altar, her eyes locking with mine, and I saw no trace of guilt, only the confidence of a woman who thought she'd won. As the officiant began the ceremony, welcoming everyone and speaking of love and commitment, I noticed the first ripples of curiosity. Guests, waiting for the vows, began to open the envelopes, assuming they were programs or keepsakes. I designed the cards to blend in, elegant, innocuous, with the QR code and a simple note, a special message for our guests. One by one, phones came out, screens glowing as people scanned the codes. I watched from the altar, my heart a steady drumbeat, as the mood in the room began to shift. A woman in the third row, a friend of Sarah's from college, furrowed her brow, her thumb scrolling as the website loaded. A man near the back, one of my father's old firehouse buddies, tilted his head, his expression morphing from confusion to something darker. Whispers started, soft at first, like a breeze rustling through the crowd, then growing into a low murmur. Sarah, standing across from me, didn't notice at first. She was focused on the officiant, her smile fixed, her hands clasped tightly around her bouquet. But I saw my mother, seated in the front row, pull out her phone, her face paling as the screen lit up. She glanced at my father, then at me, her eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. My father, oblivious, was still smiling, nodding along to the officiant's words. Then a gasp broke the silence, a sharp, audible intake of breath from a guest in the middle row. Heads turned. More phones were raised, more screens glowed, and the murmurs grew louder, a chorus of shock and confusion. The officiant faltered, sensing the shift in the room. Sarah's smile wavered, her eyes darting to the crowd, then to me. "What's going on?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising hum of voices. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The QR codes were doing their work, each scan revealing the blurred photo of her and my father. The caption cutting like a knife. "Some vows are broken before they're made." Guests exchanged glances, some covering their mouths, others whispering urgently to their neighbors. A woman in a floral dress, one of Sarah's aunts, let out a choked sob, her phone slipping to her lap. My brother Tom, seated near the aisle, stared at his screen, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking to our father with a look I'd never seen before, betrayal, raw and unfiltered. The room was no longer a chapel of celebration. It was a gallery of exposed truths. Sarah's face drained of color as she caught the shift, her gaze landing on a guest holding up a phone, the screen unmistakably showing the website. She turned to me, her eyes wide, searching for an explanation, but I held her gaze, steady and unyielding. My father, finally sensing the unrest, leaned forward, his brow furrowing as he noticed the phones, the whispers, the stares. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to regain control, but it was too late. The calm before the storm had passed, and the truth was out, spreading like wildfire through the room. Each QR code a spark igniting the unraveling of everything we'd built. The grand ballroom, once alive with the warmth of celebration, had fallen into a tense, electric hush. The string quartet's notes had faded, and the officiant, a kindly older man with a gentle voice, stood at the altar, his hands clasped over a leather-bound book. The guests, still reeling from the QR codes that had revealed the damning photo of Sarah and my father, clutched their phones, their faces a mosaic of shock, confusion, and pity. Sarah stood across from me, her white lace gown catching the soft light of the chandeliers, but her radiant smile was gone, replaced by a tight, uneasy expression. Her hazel eyes darted between me and the crowd, searching for answers she wouldn't find. My father, seated in the front row beside my mother, shifted uncomfortably, his firefighter's confidence replaced by a flicker of unease. The air was thick with anticipation, as if everyone knew something was coming but couldn't predict what. The officiant cleared his throat, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty, as he reached the part of the ceremony I'd been waiting for. "If anyone has any objection to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The words hung in the room, heavy and deliberate, like the toll of a bell. A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning, eyes locking on one another. I felt Nate, my best man, tense beside me, his hand brushing my elbow as if to steady me. But I didn't need steadying. The pain that had burned through me the night before had hardened into resolve, and I was ready. I stepped forward, my polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor, the sound sharp in the near-silent room. Every eye turned to me, and I felt the weight of their stares, my mother's wide with dread, my brother Tom's narrowed with anger, Sarah's glistening with fear. My father's face was unreadable, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles white. I took a breath, my voice low but steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I have something to say." The room seemed to contract, the walls closing in as I spoke. Last night, I received a message. My words were deliberate, each one chosen to carry the weight of the truth. Gasps punctuated the silence, soft but sharp, as the guests who hadn't yet scanned the QR codes leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. I pulled my phone from my pocket, holding it up briefly. The screen dark but heavy with meaning. A photo, undeniable. Sarah and my father, together, in a way no bride and father-in-law ever should be. Sarah's face crumpled, her hands clutching her bouquet so tightly the lilies began to wilt. She whispered my name, Michael, but it was barely audible, swallowed by the collective intake of breath from the crowd. My father stood, his chair scraping against the floor, his voice hoarse as he started, "Son, wait." But I cut him off with a look. one that carried every ounce of betrayal I felt. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes glistening with tears, and I hated that she had to hear this. But there was no turning back. "This wedding is over," I said, my voice rising, firm and final. "And so is our relationship." The words landed like a gavel, and the room fell into a stunned silence. Sarah's knees buckled slightly, and one of her bridesmaids rushed to her side, catching her arm. My father's face was ashen, his eyes locked on the floor, unable to meet mine. The guests were frozen, some still staring at their phones. The blurred image of Sarah and my father burning into their minds. I turned to the officiant, who looked as if he wanted to disappear, and nodded. "We're done here." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the faint rustle of dresses and the creak of chairs as guests shifted, unsure whether to stay or flee. I walked down the aisle, past the rows of shocked faces, past my mother's trembling hands, past Sarah's pleading eyes, and out of the ballroom, leaving behind the wreckage of a day that was supposed to be perfect. The grand ballroom, once a stage for celebration, became a graveyard of shattered dreams in the moments after I walked out. My words, "This wedding is over, and so is our relationship," hung in the air like smoke, lingering over the stunned guests, the wilting flowers, and the two people who had betrayed me most. Sarah's tear-streaked face and my father's ashen silence followed me as I left the estate. The crisp October air hitting my lungs like a shock. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The truth, exposed through those QR codes, had done its work, and in less than a week, everything they had built collapsed, the consequences rippling outward like cracks in a frozen lake. Sarah's downfall came first, swift and unforgiving. But the scandal spread faster than she could contain it. Guests at the wedding, many of whom were parents or connected to the school's community, shared the website link in hushed group chats and private messages. By Monday morning, the photo of Sarah and my father had reached the school board. Whispers of her betrayal turned into formal complaints, with parents arguing that her actions compromised her integrity as an educator. By Wednesday, the principal called her into a closed-door meeting, and by the end of the week, her classroom door was locked, her nameplate removed, and her career in tatters. She tried to reach out to me, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to desperate pleas, but I deleted them without listening. Her life, once vibrant with promise, was now a shadow, her reputation reduced to a single, damning moment. My father's reckoning was no less brutal. James had retired from the fire department as a hero, his decades of service marked by commendations and a legacy of bravery. He'd transitioned into a role as a safety consultant, training new firefighters and speaking at community events. His name synonymous with trust and sacrifice. But the photo changed everything. The firehouse, a tight-knit brotherhood, turned cold. Colleagues who once slapped his back with pride now avoided his calls. Clients canceled contracts, citing personal conflicts, and his speaking engagements dried up overnight. The website, still live, circulated among his professional circle, each viewer eroding the respect he'd spent a lifetime building. He tried to explain himself at a family meeting, his voice cracking as he claimed it was a mistake, but my brothers, Tom and Chris, shut him down, their anger palpable. By the end of the week, his office door was closed for good, his career a casualty of his own choices. My mother, Ellen, bore the deepest wound. Her quiet strength, the backbone of our family, had always been unshakable. But this betrayal cracked something fundamental. She sat silently through the family meeting, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor. 2 days after the wedding, I found her in the kitchen of their Oak Park home, a suitcase open on the counter, her wedding ring glinting on the table, abandoned like a relic. She'd filed for divorce that morning, her voice steady but hollow as she told me, "I can't live with someone I don't know anymore." She moved into a small apartment downtown, leaving behind the sprawling house filled with memories of Sunday dinners and laughter. The suitcase, packed with only what she needed, symbolized a new start. But the pain in her eyes told me it wasn't one she'd wanted. In the days that followed, the fallout reshaped our family. My brothers rallied around Mom, their loyalty fierce, while my father retreated, his calls unanswered, his presence a ghost in our lives. Sarah vanished from my world, her belongings gone from our brownstone by the time I returned. The life we'd planned, kids, a dog, a beach house, dissolved like a dream I couldn't hold on to. The consequences were merciless, but they were just. Sarah and my father had built their lives on lies. And now those lies had burned everything to the ground. The dust of the wedding that never happened settled slowly, leaving behind a landscape of broken trust and raw wounds. Chicago, once a city of dreams where I'd built a life with Sarah, now felt like a maze of memories I couldn't escape. Every corner of my Lincoln Park brownstone held echoes of her laugh in the kitchen, her art supplies scattered on the dining table, the faint scent of her lavender perfume lingering in the air. My family, too, was fractured, my mother in her new downtown apartment, my father a stranger in his self-imposed exile, my brothers grappling with their anger. Staying felt like suffocating, so I made a choice. I packed my life into a few boxes, sold the brownstone, and moved to Denver, chasing a fresh start in a city where the mountains promised clarity and the past couldn't follow. At 34, starting over wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Denver greeted me with crisp air and endless skies, a stark contrast to Chicago's urban hum. I rented a small loft in the Rhino district, its exposed brick walls and high windows offering a blank canvas for a new chapter. My career as an architect gave me an anchor. A friend from college connected me with a firm working on sustainable housing projects, and I threw myself into the work, designing homes that blended with the rugged beauty of the Rockies. The long hours sketching blueprints and meeting with clients kept my mind busy, each project a step toward rebuilding not just structures, but myself. I found solace in the precision of my work, lines and angles that made sense when nothing else did. Life in Denver wasn't just about work. I started small, reclaiming pieces of myself I'd lost in the betrayal. I joined a hiking group, spending weekends trekking trails in Boulder, the crunch of gravel under my boots grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in months. The group was a mix of locals and transplants, people in their 30s and 40s who didn't ask too many questions but shared stories over campfires. I began to laugh again, the sound surprising me at first, like a muscle I'd forgotten how to use. I adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy mutt named Riley, whose eager bounds through the park forced me out of my head and into the present. Mornings became rituals of coffee on my balcony. Watching the sun rise over the mountains, Riley curled at my feet. I stayed in touch with my mother, calling her weekly to check in. She was finding her footing, taking pottery classes, and rediscovering a spark I hadn't seen since I was a kid. My brothers visited once, their banter a reminder that some bonds couldn't be broken. My father remained a shadow, his attempts at contact unanswered. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. Sarah was gone, her name fading from my thoughts like a song I no longer played. The pain of their betrayal lingered, but it no longer defined me. Denver gave me space to breathe, to rebuild, to find a version of myself that didn't carry the weight of their choices. Looking back, the wedding that unraveled in that ballroom was a turning point, not an end. The truth, as brutal as it was, cut away the illusions I'd clung to. A perfect fiancé, a heroic father, a flawless future. In their place, I found something rawer, truer, freedom. Freedom to choose who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and what I wanted my life to mean. Sometimes, the harshest truths are the ones that set you free. Standing on my balcony, the mountain air cool against my skin, I felt it, a quiet strength, a new beginning, and the promise of a life built on my terms. The Denver skyline stretched before me, a quiet reminder that life moves forward, even after the deepest betrayals. The wedding that never happened, the shattered trust between me, Sarah, and my father, and the painful unraveling of my family's foundation had once felt like the end. But standing here, with Riley dozing at my feet and the mountains framing a new horizon, I realized those harsh truths had carved a path to freedom. For the Vietnamese American community, where family and loyalty run deep, this story might hit close to home. We hold tight to tradition, to trust, to the idea that love and family are sacred. Yet, when those are broken, what do? I chose to expose the truth, to rebuild my life on my terms, and to find strength in letting go. What about you? If you were in my shoes, faced with a betrayal that shook your world, how would you move forward? What lesson from this story resonates with you? And how will you carry it into your own life? Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned in the comments below. We're all navigating this.